Growing up, Stronghold and Age of Empires were household games that I would play daily. Until now, no other RTS game has ever been able to match the sensations that you would get from games like those. That being real-time gathering, resource management, castle building, citizen retention, and all that fun stuff rather than being a very slow turn-based game or something heavily focused on political systems and complex mechanics. All I ever cared about was the scouting, campaigns, and genuinely exciting and difficult gameplay brought up by your own inability to micromanage. Diplomacy is not an option exceeds every one of my expectations. It does not simply copy aspects, it also incorporates elements that make it unique to itself. It's not really that complicated, and it is quite simple to learn, but it's still surprisingly challenging. That is, if you actually choose a higher difficulty. Your decisions will influence the outcome of the story, playing out differently depending on whether you struggled or not, and of course, if you chose a different side at the very beginning. Here you'd be playing as one of the king's vassals of the lands, and a very arrogant one at that, taxing your subjects and spending it all on wine and family rather than on the kingdom itself. When you end up running out of money, you notice that your squire hasn't brought you any more because your subjects are just not paying their taxes, and they're even going on a peasant's revolt, killing all of your tax collectors. They're doing this across much of the kingdom, and you are tasked with putting an end to it or even joining the revolution, which changes the story as you go through. It's as if I'm playing two games at once, Stronghold's building and resource management just in a more visually pleasing style, especially with the ability to pause the game if you want to take your time a little bit more to fully micromanage. But then the combat itself feels closer to Age of Empires, with the ability to kite with your ranged units and to scout and survey the area for resources, encampments, and so on as you plan out your strategy in completing the current campaign, be it surviving waves or any one of the many different tasks that will be given to you based on which game mode you decided to play through. All of these challenges may seem simple until you understand that the longer you end up waiting, the much harder the enemy forces will start to become. Adding on siege equipment, heavier troops, and all the while you're struggling, or maybe you're not struggling with your resource management and kingdom growth. There's just so much here to keep you mentally stimulated for many hours while also giving you some nice mellow and relaxing music to vibe to until the incoming siege, which you really don't want to wait for. You want to complete the current mission and then get out. If you wish to play online multiplayer, this is not the game for you because it is only a single player experience. It is a very tough campaign-based RTS that will test your skills to the next level, depending on whether you take on some of the more difficult or simply impossible missions. It's really all up to you. However, it does scratch the itch in ways that I haven't been able to scratch in years. It can definitely help develop your skills if you feel rusty when it comes to satisfying gameplay like this. When you run out of resources, you'll have to continually keep your workflow moving while also ensuring that you have enough supplies and food flowing in to keep everything else running well. At first, I expected the second difficulty to be fairly simple but still challenging, and it was with a good balance until I got to the later stages, where you're constantly bombarded by a sea of peasants that grows with time from the south and an ever-expanding army from all sides, with the main goal being to build a bunch of ships and board them with enough of the units before being overwhelmed. To me, these were the most challenging missions compared to the wave survival. And it's not because they were difficult, it's more because there were a few issues. One thing I just couldn't take was the randomness. I think it's because I'm just so used to campaign modes in the other games that have static maps with resources dispersed throughout and a specific strategy for defeating your opponents, such as Dark Age Spearmen Tower Rush in Age of Empires or the Crossbowmen Rush in Stronghold. In any event, at first I thought it would be static, erecting a defense in the direction that they came from at first, only to have them flank me from an undefended side and smash through. But then other times, they would come from only one location, which was very frustrating considering it was the same mission. Because of this, I believe the randomness added to the game could make it less enjoyable or even unpolished. Let's say you restarted the same mission, and you got an amazing spawn. You got stone that's quite close, with loads of iron, wood, and food surrounded by mountains on all sides. But then you fail and start again, only to have nothing nearby, no mountains to protect you, quarries and mines that are not permitted to be placed on because you need to get Town Hall 3, build a university, study research, and then get infinite stone and iron. You can't get a good start because the resources are coming in 50% slower or not at all because it's all surrounded by a huge army. Even if you did build a storage right on top of it, they will all most likely be destroyed because they are in the pathway of the incoming army. That would just eat into more supplies earlier, leaving you with no resources for the defense that you also require. The fact that you have to manually research and repair structures was probably the most annoying aspect of the game. I would have preferred a more automated approach to it. Like when something has finished researching, make it show up more visibly and ask the player what they would like to do next. Or simply provide a button to repair everything rather than just having to click individual buildings together to repair them all. I really do love games that are truly classic RTS, with a simple yet challenging amount of depth. So far, this is the best experience I've seen in games since Stronghold, Age of Empires, and of course, StarCraft, with some of their own twists added in, such as gold being acquired through the market rather than taxing your kingdom because they don't want to pay their taxes, making it a constant difficult task to manage specific resources as your main form of gold income while managing the rest. With the game's official release approaching, I do hope that they address some of these shortcomings. Even if they don't, it's still a fantastic game if you are the type of person who enjoys a classic RTS, especially if you're just sick and tired of the overly complex 4K RTS that we see on an everyday basis.